Welcome. For 53 years, TCR Engineering has been the independent laboratory that developers, contractors, and government bodies use to prove what a structure is actually made of. Our position is simple. A construction program should run on evidence, not on assurance. Today, we will walk through the whole civil and infrastructure testing bench, from the cement and the ground under the foundation, to the rebar couplers inside a metro viaduct, to the audit of a building that is already 30 years old. Our work rests on three commitments: transparency, competence, and reliability. Here is the whole argument in one sentence. A construction program does not fail on the material somebody tested. It fails on the component nobody tested. So the real question is not whether to test. It is whether one accountable laboratory can cover the entire build under a single accreditation. Three things make that possible at TCR. Coverage, because every material class runs off one bench. Defensibility, because 1,483 accredited scope items sit behind the report. And because we mark clearly where a method falls outside that scope. And cadence, because we work to your program dates, not to ours. Three buyers use civil testing for three different reasons. So the rest of this brief is organized the way they buy. A developer is buying handover quality and a building that does not generate defect complaints at possession. An infrastructure contractor is buying program certainty and a place on the approved laboratory list before the testing packages are committed. A structural audit client, whether a housing society, a factory, or a government department, is buying statutory compliance and a defensible opinion on how much life the structure has left. Read the segment that matches your role. The credentials and the logistics are common to all three. 6 approvals decide whether a laboratory can even be named in a tender, and TCR holds all 6 with reference numbers your procurement team can verify before it awards. NABL accreditation to ISO 17025. Certificate ending 18640. Valid to March 2030. BIS recognition for Rebar Couplers. Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation roads registration from March 2026. CIDCO empanelment covering Navi Mumbai and the 3rd Mumbai belt. National High Speed Rail Corporation approval on all 3 civil packages, and NADCAP aerospace materials testing accreditation on the same metallurgical bench. Accreditation is not a logo on a letterhead. It is a traceable measurement chain with a stated uncertainty, and that is precisely what survives an arbitration, an audit, or a municipal challenge. 4 things sit behind every accredited number. The instrument is calibrated against a national standard and the chain is on file. The result carries a measurement uncertainty budget. The method has been validated on your specific material, because accreditation on steel does not automatically extend to concrete or to water, and the laboratory proves itself in interlaboratory comparisons. Strip any of those away, and what remains is an opinion with a decimal point in it. This is the slide most laboratories will not show you. We publish the boundary of our own accreditation. On the left is what carries the NABL mark today: cement, binders, admixtures, aggregates, concrete, including the durability suite, blocks, bricks, paver blocks, ceramic tiles, stone, rebar couplers, soil chemistry, and the site non-destructive tests on reinforced concrete. On the right is what we perform to the same quality system but report with the standard non-accredited disclaimer. Tile adhesive beyond the pull-off, plywood, door shutters, soil mechanical testing, cover survey, bitumen. We publish this because a report that overstates its scope is the fastest way to lose a client in approval. Testing fails on logistics far more often than it fails on chemistry. So the operational answers come first. What to send, how much of it, how fast it comes back, and who collects it. 3 concrete cubes give you a strength result the next working day. 30 kilograms of soil covers a CBR. 24 blocks covers a full AAC analysis. 1 liter of water covers the construction water panel under IS 456. And the piece that removes the argument entirely? TCR runs a free TCR branded sample pickup van across the entire Mumbai metropolitan region, lifting samples from your site to our Mahape laboratory at no charge. Long-term rate contracts are not won on price. They are won by a laboratory that holds the client's program dates as if they were its own. So we derive the test calendar from the construction calendar. Cube ages, coupler lot releases, and pour temperatures are booked against your bar chart before the month starts. Our site teams attend the pour, the pile, and the lot release rather than waiting for a sample to arrive. And where a method sits outside our credited scope, we still carry the consolidated report and 1 signature. That is why Godrej, Kalpataru, Shapurji Palonji, and Rustomji renew rather than requote. Segment 1. Real estate developers. The defining feature of this segment is that a tower is judged twice. It is judged at handover on the finish, on whether the tiles are flat, the shutters are square, and the adhesive holds. And it is judged 20 years later on the concrete, on whether the cover was right and the chloride stayed out. Most laboratories serve one of those 2 moments. TCR tests new construction materials and building finishing works on the same bench, under the same accreditation, with 1 report and 1 point of accountability. A developer's real exposure is not the cost of the material. It is the cost of removing it after possession. 3 things drive that. First, a supplier certificate describes a lot the supplier selected. It is not a measurement of the consignment that arrived at your gate, and aggregate varies by quarry and by season. Second, finishing defects are discovered by the buyer across 300 flats after handover. Third, durability failures surface after the defect liability period, when the decision that caused them was actually made at the pour. Independent testing costs under 0.5% of material value. It is the 0.5% that validates the other 99.5%. Every cementitious binder that goes into the mix is tested chemically and physically before it is approved for the pour. And every parameter on this list sits inside the accredited scope. Cement runs a full chemical panel under IS 4032 and a full physical panel under IS 4031 out of the 28-day strength. Slag, microsilica, fly ash and alkafine each carry their own chemistry and their own activity or reactivity index. The point is not the individual test. It is that a mixed design is only as good as the weakest binder in it. And you cannot know which one that is without measuring all of them. Admixture and water are the 2 mix inputs most often accepted on trust. And they are the 2 that most reliably explain a strength result nobody can otherwise account for. On the admixture side, 1 liter and 5 days gives you the chemical panel under IS 9103. Dry material content, relative density, chloride ion content, pH and ash. On the water side, 1 liter and 3 days gives you the full 9 parameter panel that IS 456 Annex A actually requires. TCR carries all 9 on the accredited scope. Chloride in mixing water attacks the rebar from inside the concrete, where no cover thickness protects it. Aggregate is 60 to 75% of the concrete by volume, and the most variable input on the site, which is why the aggregate panel is the one we ask developers to run most often. On the physical side, grading, specific gravity, water absorption, bulk density, impact, crushing, 10% fines, Los Angeles abrasion, flakiness and elongation. On the chemical side, soundness in sodium and magnesium sulfate, alkali aggregate reactivity, chloride, sulfate, and organic impurities. The one that catches most sites is the 75 micron fraction in the sand. It drives the water demand, and the water demand drives the strength. A sand change nobody tested is the most common cause of an unexplained cube result. Reinforcement is where a saving on paper becomes a liability in concrete. Mechanically, we run tensile strength, 0.2% proof stress, elongation, reduction in area, and the bend and rebend test, which is the check that finds embrittlement a tensile test alone will pass. Chemically, we run carbon, sulfur, phosphorus, and the full element suite on the spark emission spectrometer, because carbon equivalent governs weldability and cold bend behavior. And at the gate, we verify the identification mark, the visual condition, and the weight per meter of the bundle that actually arrived. That last one is what separates the certificate from the steel. Concrete is tested 3 times over, and all 3 have to reconcile. Before the pour, we design or revalidate the mix under IS 10262, and revalidation matters most when a binder, a sand, or an admixture source changes. During the pour, we measure workability, plastic density, and, critically, concrete temperature to ASTM-C 1064, which sits on our accredited site scope. After the pour, we measure compressive strength on cubes, on extracted cores, flexural strength on beams, density, and where there is a dispute, cement content, and chloride content on the hardened concrete itself. That last set is the forensic one. Strength tells you whether the building stands up today. Durability tells you how long it keeps standing. And in coastal Mumbai, that is the more expensive question to get wrong. The rapid chloride penetration test under ASTM-C 1202 is the most specified durability test in this city, and it is on our accredited scope. So is the rapid chloride migration test under NT-Build 492, which gives you a coefficient you can put into a service life model rather than a comparative index. So is water permeability, which is usually the acceptance criterion on a raft or a water tank. 3 cubes per test, 5 to 6 days. Tile testing is the fastest growing line on our civil bench. And the reason is simple. A tile is the one material a flat buyer inspects personally, from standing height on handover day. TCR carries 28 accredited ceramic tile parameters under IS 13630. 9 of them are geometry: length, width, thickness, rectangularity, straightness, and 4 separate flatness measurements. The rest covers strength, abrasion, water absorption, thermal shock, crazing, frost, and the coefficient of friction, wet and dry, which is the slip test that reaches a court. Sample 6 to 24 tiles, depending on size, 20 days. A tile that passes every test still fails if the adhesive lets go. And adhesive is where Indian sites most often substitute a grade without telling anybody. The full panel under IS 15477 covers tensile and shear adhesion, dry, wet, and after heat aging, plus open time, adjustment time, slip, and deformability. 25 kilograms per type, 35 days. That panel sits outside our accredited scope, and we say so. What is accredited is the pull-off test under ASTMD 4541, including on-site and the full grout suite. The on-site pull-off is the one that matters because it measures the bond your applicator achieved. Blocks and bricks are bought by the truckload on price and installed before anybody measures them. So the whole masonry package is verified on arrival rather than after the plaster cracks. AC blocks are accredited. 24 blocks gives you dimensions, compressive strength, density, drying shrinkage, moisture content, and thermal conductivity in 15 to 21 days. Burnt clay bricks and paving blocks are also accredited. Note the cover block at the bottom of that list. It is the cheapest item on the page. 1 block and 2 days. And it is the reason a rebar cover survey fails 6 months later. Plywood and door shutters are the two finishing items that fail loudest after possession. And both are now high volume lines on the TCR bench. Plywood. 3 panels of 1 meter by 1 meter, 28 days, covering dimensions, moisture, density, glue shear strength dry, and after 72 hours in water, tensile, static bending, and nail and screw holding power. That water resistance set is the BWP versus MR distinction, measured rather than claimed. Door shutters. 1 full-size shutter, 20 days, 16 tests, including slamming, misuse, end immersion, and screw withdrawal. Both sit outside our accredited scope today, and we mark them accordingly. Stone, boards, and plaster complete the finishing package. The stone family is fully accredited, which matters because a marble floor is both the most visible and the most disputed surface in a tower. 7 pieces of 300 by 300 millimeter marble, 8 days, gives you water absorption, specific gravity, hardness, and dimensions. Granite and rock the same. Gypsum plaster, building lime and timber are also accredited. Fiber cement board, gypsum board, precast pipes, wooden flooring, waterproofing compound, refractory castables, and bentonite are tested to the cited standards and reported outside accredited scope. The facade package is where a developer's specification is quietly value engineered. So aluminium sections and glass are verified for alloy, coating, and safety performance rather than for appearance. On aluminium, we run the full chemical composition by optical emission spectrometry, which is the check that finds a 6063 section sold as 6061. Then tensile, hardness, weight per meter, powder coating thickness, scratch hardness, and cross-cut adhesion. On glass, we measure surface compression on toughened panes, which is what separates genuinely toughened glass from heat-strengthened glass, and edge displacement on laminated panes. A waterproofing membrane is specified on its tensile strength and it fails on its elongation. A STMD 412 measures both maximum stress before rupture and how far the elastomer stretches first. A membrane at 400% elongation accommodates 5 times its original length. One at 100% reaches only double. But T412 pulls a clean strip under ideal conditions, and buildings do not crack under ideal conditions. So we pair it with the crack bridging test under AS-NZS 4548.5, where the membrane is bonded to a cracked substrate and the crack is opened while the membrane is watched. Coastal Mumbai concrete is a chloride problem. A bipolar corrosion inhibiting admixture acts on both halves of the corrosion cell at once. It forms a protective layer on the steel and it slows chloride penetration through the concrete. Older anodic only inhibitors leave the cathodic half running once chloride arrives. Chloride breaches the passive film on steel at about 0.4% by mass of cement. And past that point, the rust expands, cracks the cover, and accelerates itself. Indian Railways specifies this category under RDSO specification 126 of 2020. TCR holds NABL accreditation on 7 parameters of that specification. 4 of India's largest developers hold long-term rate contracts with TCR rather than issuing job orders. The Godrej Properties contract, awarded April 2026, runs 3 years across the whole Mumbai zone and more than 8 locations. Its scope is a fair description of what a full developer engagement looks like. Aluminium formwork, tiles and stones, concrete including RCPT and site ultrasonic pulse velocity, AAC blocks, and reinforcement steel with carbon equivalent. Kalpataru, Shapoji Palonji, and Rustomji run on the same basis. What made those shortlists possible was CIDCO empanelment and BMC registration. This is the page to send to a procurement or quality engineer. 24 materials, what to collect, how much of it, and when the result lands. 3 cubes gives you strength in 1 day. 25 kilograms of cement gives you the full physical panel, though that one runs 28 days because it goes to the 28-day strength. 24 AAC blocks, 15 days. 6 to 24 tiles, depending on size, 20 days. 25 kilograms of tile adhesive per type, 35 days. 1 liter of construction water, 3 days. And the pickup van collects all of it from your site at no charge, anywhere in the Mumbai metropolitan region. Segment 2. Infrastructure and EPC contractors. This segment has one structural feature that developers do not. The laboratory has to be on the approved list before the testing package is committed, and often before the contract is even awarded. That is why the approvals matter more here than the price list does. TCR is the first BIS-accredited commercial laboratory in India for Rebar Couplers, approved on all 3 high-speed rail civil packages, registered with the BMC Roads Department, and empaneled with CIDCO for the 3rd Mumbai belt. Maharashtra has committed a new project pipeline from 2026 onward that will consume construction materials testing for a decade, and the laboratory decision on each package is being made now. 6 projects sit in the top priority band. 3rd Mumbai and the KSC Newtown, 323 square kilometers in the Raigad corridor. NAINA, the Navi Mumbai Airport Influence Ecosystem. The Thain Ring Metro, 29 kilometers and 22 stations. Mumbai Metro Line 5A and the Vadavan Port to Samruddhi Freight Corridor. TCR's strategy is to be on the approved laboratory list at the planning and EPC stage, not afterwards. This is the capability I would ask you to remember. TCR is the first and only commercial laboratory in India accredited by BIS for the full IS 16172 Rebar Coupler scope 8 mm to 40 and on a viaduct program that is not a credential. It is a critical part dependency. Here is why. In congested reinforcement, a lap splice needs length, cover, and space a metro pier cap does not have, so a mechanical splice replaces it. Once the coupler carries the load path, the coupler is the reinforcement. Lots are released against test evidence. If the laboratory is not accepted, the lot does not release, and the segment does not cast. The coupler qualification set is 5 mechanical tests plus the chemistry, and each one exists because a different real failure mode was found in service. The static tensile test proves the splice is stronger than the bar, so failure occurs in the bar. The slip test measures residual movement across the splice, because a coupler that is strong but not stiff turns slip into crack width, and crack width into chloride ingress. The cyclic test finds progressive loosening. Low cycle fatigue is the seismic test. High cycle fatigue is the live load test over decades. And the chemistry catches a coupler machine from the wrong grade, which the mechanical tests on a good sample will not. Pre-stressing steel and reinforcement carry the load in every viaduct and every long span deck. High tensile strand is tested for breaking load, 0.2% proof load, elongation and relaxation under IS 14268 and AS TMA 416. We deliver that on all 3 high-speed rail civil packages. Strand governs camber, pre-stress loss, and therefore the long-term geometry of a segmental viaduct. On reinforcement, we run the full IS 1786 set plus fatigue and carbon equivalent. And because the metallurgical bench, the concrete bench, and the site NDT bench sit under one management system, an anomaly in one gets chased into the others. Geotechnical and pavement layer testing is a large part of every highway and township package. The foundation soil suite covers modified Proctor, CBR, Atterberg limits, sieve analysis, specific gravity, unconfined compression, free swell, and field density. Granular sub-base and wet mix macadam carry their own gradation, impact, and design mix sets under MOTH. 30 kilograms covers a CBR or a Proctor. Now the honest part. Only the soil chemistry sits inside our NABL scope. pH, chloride, sulfate, organic matter, and calcium carbonate. The mechanical suite is performed to the same standards and reported outside accredited scope, and we mark it that way. Road and pavement work reaches TCR through the BMC Roads Department registration secured in March 2026. Reference CHE/RDS/8292. NABL accreditation was the prerequisite for it. The registration covers chemical, mechanical, and non-destructive testing inside Greater Mumbai. On pavement layers, we run granular sub-base, wet mix macadam, dry lean concrete, and pavement quality concrete design. On the built road, we run pavement condition index, roughness, and deflection by Benkelman beam, or falling weight deflectometer. Bitumen itself is delivered through a qualified partner laboratory under our oversight. And we say so rather than presenting it as our own scope. 500 bridges is not a marketing number. It is an operating capability. TCR runs a continuous program with Maharashtra PWD, and from March 2026, a robotic underwater inspection program with the BMC covering more than 400 bridges with AI assistance on the imagery. The reason robotic and underwater access matters is that the majority of unexpected bridge failures originate at the pier, the pile cap, and the scour protection, which is precisely what a walkover survey never sees. The output is not a list of observations. It is a condition rating, a repair scheme, specifications, tender documents, and a cost estimate. Structural steel, welding, and fatigue sit on the same accredited metallurgical bench that serves aerospace. On mechanical properties, we run tensile, proof stress, elongation, CHAPI, and IZOD impact, including sub-zero, hardness in 3 scales, and component fatigue. On welding, we run bend tests to ASME Section 9, AWSD 1.1, and API 1104, plus macro and micro examination of the weld and heat affected zone. On non-destructive testing, we run ultrasonic, radiographic, magnetic particle, and liquid penetrant, accredited in the laboratory and on-site. That bench also holds NADCAP AC 7101, which is the strictest audit any of it faces. Industrial civil infrastructure is a distinct market from buildings and roads. TCR certifies grain silos to 10,000 metric ton capacity against EN 10346 S350GD coated steel sheet. And where the silo carries an explosive dust scope, the assessment runs inside the ATEX and PESO certification framework, because grain dust is an explosion hazard with its own regulatory register. The same capability extends to pipe rack foundations, equipment plinths, machine foundations and chimneys, read against IS 4998, IS 11960, and IS 875, Part 3 for wind. A chimney, a stack, or a tall building core that is out of plumb is carrying a wind moment nobody designed for. And theodolite survey is the measurement that turns a suspicion into a number. We measure deviation from vertical at successive elevations, straightness between them, which distinguishes a uniform lean from a local bulge and twist. Here is why it matters. A vertical structure carries its self-weight through its own axis. A leaning one carries it at an eccentricity, and that adds a permanent base moment. The deviation report tells the owner how much design capacity has already been consumed before the wind arrives. The infrastructure track record is the part of this brief a procurement team can verify independently, which is why it carries more weight than any capability claim. TCR is approved on the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed rail under VMAC number 13, dated October 2023, and engaged across all 3 civil packages since March 2024. MEILHCC, AFCONS, and Larsen & Toubro. 500 bridges with Maharashtra PWD. 400 bridges in the BMC Robotic Underwater Program. The Statue of Unity through construction. Mumbai Metro, the Coastal Road. Antilia, Wankhede Stadium. On an infrastructure package, the laboratory decision is made earlier than most contractors expect. So the useful question is who to bring TCR to and at what stage. 10 roles matter, starting with the authority that maintains the approved laboratory list and the DPR consultant who actually writes the testing specification. If that specification names a scope no accredited laboratory in the region holds, the program discovers it 2 years later. Then vendor registration, which has a lead time, then mobilization, first lot release, construction stage, and finally the handover audit baseline, So the owner starts the asset's life with a measured condition record. Segment 3. Structural audit. This is a statutory practice, not a discretionary one. More than a dozen audits completed across India, and in Mumbai alone, more than 30,000 buildings sit inside the statutory audit mandate. The work is not a walkover and a letter. It is a 3-part method: a member-by-member visual survey, a non-destructive evaluation at the locations the survey identifies, and a repair and rehabilitation consultancy that ends in a structural stability certificate once the work is done. The same method applies to a housing society and to a refinery. Clause 77 of the Maharashtra Municipal Corporations Act puts a statutory clock on every building past 15 years, and the obligation sits with the society or the owner, not with the municipality. An audit is recommended from 15 years and mandatory past 30. The cycle is 5 years between 15 and 30 and 3 years after 30. What the audit has to establish is present condition, expected residual life, areas needing immediate repair, and a corrective program. Here is the commercial point. Between 15 and 30 years, repair is a maintenance decision. Past 30, with corrosion already through the cover, it is a rehabilitation project at several times the cost. The audit runs in 3 parts, and the sequence is the discipline. Part A is a member-by-member visual survey, inside and outside, with photographic documentation and a review of whatever drawings still exist. Its output is the list of locations Part B will test, because testing everywhere is not an audit, it is a budget. Part B is the non-destructive evaluation at those locations: pulse velocity, rebound hammer, half cell potential, carbonation depth, cover survey, and core extraction. Part C interprets both together, diagnoses the root cause, writes the repair scheme, the specifications, the tender documents and the cost estimate, and issues the stability certificate after the work. 6 site tests carry almost every structural audit conclusion, and 4 of the 6 cite on our NABL site scope. Ultrasonic pulse velocity for homogeneity and voiding. Rebound hammer for surface hardness, always read with pulse velocity and never alone. Half cell potential for a corrosion probability map across a grid rather than a spot reading. And carbonation depth, which is the test that explains why the corrosion started in the first place. All 4 accredited. The cover survey and ground penetrating radar sit outside accredited scope, and we mark them. Core extraction is accredited in the laboratory and is the only direct measurement in the list. Rebar cover survey has become one of the fastest growing services on the bench, because clear cover is the single design parameter most often lost between the drawing and the pour. The scanner uses pulsed eddy current or electromagnetic induction to return rebar location, cover depth, and bar diameter together, typically within 10 millimeters on cover. We scan on a grid, not on spots, and report in 2 and 3 dimensions, so the cover map overlays the reinforcement drawing. Most of coastal Mumbai is severe or very severe exposure, needing 45 to 50 millimeters. A slab poured at 22 has not lost half its cover. It has lost most of its service life. Fresh concrete temperature monitoring is the other fast-growing on-site line, and unlike the cover survey, it sits squarely inside our accredited site scope under ASTM-C 1064. Cement hydration is exothermic. In a raft, a pile cap, or a transfer girder, the core cannot shed heat as fast as the surface, so the core expands against a cooler restraint, then contracts against a hardened surface, and the element cracks from the inside out. The controlling variable is the core to surface differential, not the peak alone. We measure placement temperature on the accredited method and track the profile through the hydration peak. An industrial or government structural audit answers a different question from a housing society audit. Not whether the building is safe to occupy, but whether the asset can carry another operating cycle. In a plant, that means the workshop frame, the crane gantry, the pipe rack foundation, the machine plinth, and the chimney. In a public asset, it means a deliverable written to be usable inside a budget cycle, condition rating, prioritized defect register, repair scheme, specification, quantities and cost. And a cracked plinth under a rotating machine is a vibration problem before it is a concrete problem, which is why the audit has to name the cause and not just the symptom. The named audit engagements span a data center, a pharmaceutical factory, a power transmission facility, an educational campus, and a residential complex, which is the range the method is built to cover. The STT Global Data Center, built by Larsen and Toubro, where continuous operation constrains both access and intrusive testing. Vikas Complex in Thane West, KC College in Thane, Essential Power Transmission in Andheri, Synergia Life Sciences at Vada, Petro India at Sangana, Jaipur, alongside the continuous Maharashtra PWD Bridge Program and the BMC Robotic Underwater Program. More than a dozen audits in total and 500 bridges. An audit that stops at a report has done half a job because the expensive decisions come afterwards. TCR stays in the engagement through 5 stages. Diagnose, where the visual survey and the NDT are interpreted together and the root cause is named, including whether the cause is still acting. Specify, writing a scheme a contractor can price and an engineer can enforce. Tender, including independent scrutiny of the bids received. Supervise, with periodic inspection during the repair, which is the stage most owners have no independent presence at. And certify, issuing the structural stability certificate against inspected work. Water testing is the newest line on the bench, and I want to be precise about it. Construction water is deep and fully accredited. All 9 parameters that IS 456 Annex A requires. 1 litre, 3 days. Of the 11 accredited water laboratories in the Mumbai region, only one other matches that construction water depth. Drinking water is accredited today on pH, chloride, and sulfate. The wider IS 10500 panel is performed and reported outside accredited scope while the extension is built. Microbiology runs through a partner laboratory. Boiler feed water chemistry is the strategic priority and is in build. This is the standards register a consultant or an authority will ask for. Group the way a specification is written rather than the way a laboratory is organized. 11 domains. From concrete and cement through soil, bitumen, rebar and couplers, structural steel and welding, non-destructive testing on concrete, the full building and finishing materials register, bridge and structural assessment, water, and the laboratory quality standards themselves. I will not read this list aloud. Take it as the reference page and note the last row. ISO 17025. the ILAC Mutual Recognition Arrangement, and the GUM and EURACHEM Uncertainty Framework behind every number. The second engagement card covers the infrastructure and audit side. On the geotechnical and pavement bench, 30 kilograms for a CBR or a Proctor, 15 for a dry sieve, 1 kilogram for each Atterberg limit, 40 kilograms for wet mix macadam grading. On the on-site bench, a minimum of 10 measurement points per visit for pulse velocity and rebound hammer, 1 location each for half cell, carbonation and cover meter, and a 2-day report. Fresh concrete temperatures reported the same day at the pour, and the pickup van collects everything that has to come to Mahape. If you take one page from this brief, take this one. 4 things. 1 laboratory for the whole build, with 1 chain of custody and 1 signature. Accreditation. A procurement team can verify independently. 1483 NABL scope items. First, BIS-accredited commercial laboratory in India for Rebar Couplers, BMC registered, CIDCO empaneled, high-speed rail approved. Honesty about the boundary. Because an unmarked claim is what costs a client an approval, and a marked non-accredited test never has. And a laboratory that runs on your calendar with a free pickup van across the whole Mumbai metropolitan region. The cost of a component that was never tested is never the cost of the component. It is the rectification, the delay, the arbitration, and on a bad day, the structure. The cost of certainty is a laboratory relationship. So here is the practical ask. Pick one material you are least sure about on your current site. Call +9 198 33 5 30 200 and we will send the van. Our work rests on 3 commitments: transparency, competence, and reliability. Thank you.